Everything you need to know about wants and desires. Let's get things started by going over what wanting something means, followed by a story, and then see what needs to be covered more. The basis of everything is a desire or a strong emotional feeling to accomplish, gain, be given, fulfill or replace something. When the search you are after takes a look at the individual on the inside, you start to realize a couple of important points. There is no need when there is a want, and the emotions are temporary. Instead, you figure out that wants are obtained because you feel jealousy, envy, or feeling left out, a fear of missing out on, and a worry about what uncertainty holds in store for you. This leads you to believe that wanting only takes you to more wanting until death stops that want. When you answer the questions that really make any sense, what will solve my unmet needs? It takes us past everything that is merely a result of the root of the issue. For instance, a need to be happy is caused by a want to be loving or loved. You will find that you can never achieve enough of this because you haven't declared a specific amount of this. Somewhere buried inside of each of us is that desire to show nothing but love to ourselves and others. It becomes a conviction when you have gained compassion, and this will undoubtedly lead us to loving ourselves unconditionally. To put this into plain English means you need to look at every experience and decide, can you find a way to love the person? When this happens, you gain happiness each and every time. This person has more to do with yourself than it does everyone else. Because you can only love something as much as you love yourself. To prove this, we need to think about the universe and trace things backward from there. Every single part of the universe consists of the same things we are made up of. Starting with the universe, we look backwards toward the galaxies. This shows us the stars, which involve planets. When we find a planet such as Earth, we go into the atmosphere and get down to the surface. From there we find life forms, humans, animals, plants, insects, bacteria, viruses, and so forth. What does each of these consist of? Electrons, protons, and neutrons. This will go down further and further until we are at the very simplest cells that we know of. Based only on our understanding do we ever figure out that we have what is called life. That only happens in a person's mind. Without a mind we simply have nothing. We also describe everything that is unknown as nothing. This includes what we don't know about the universe. But it's still something when we think long and hard. Let's assume that humans are the only conscious beings, but animals still think, and thinking means something is capable of being conscious. When we look at a plant, we don't find thinking or a process known as consciousness. Based on all of this we see that humans are the only things that consist of everything needed to be alive. And it's based on this that all life exists. So far until we create something with AI, but would AI be able to have consciousness? I don't think so, and it's because of this knowledge that we can show each other we are alive. But life doesn't last, and inevitably we will break back down to everything else. Doesn't this mean then that life is everything or nothing? And if you believe that life is only around because humans have consciousness, then where did the idea of consciousness come from? Without a universe that is also conscious, nothing can be something. Consciousness means we create wants and needs. Let's take a look at the animal kingdom for a second. What do animals exist to do? In our minds they rely on basic instincts, or something their mind tells them to do. Isn't that the same thing that we have and experience? The only difference is that we are capable of wanting something and other things are what we actually need. So going even further, this would mean that all we need to do is prove that an animal wants something and it will then have a consciousness as well, right? Pay attention to a cat for a while. Do they not want attention some of the time and need it at other times? Have you ever cornered a cat and petted it? You build trust with an animal and it starts to want attention. If that animal never develops a trust for attention, it can live its entire life and not need it. So this must mean that an animal is the same as a human. Let's look at plants. Do they have needs? Yes. Do they have wants? Could they have any wants, and what on earth could these be? A plant can survive on a certain amount of sunlight. This would fulfill its need. But a plant isn't gonna dislike more of that if it's available. Have you ever noticed that a plant or a tree will grow towards a source that it needs? Does this then become its want or its desire for more? And if you conclude as I have, then this would mean it has both needs and wants, which will make it conscious as well. More wanting, more needing, and more desires. More. Isn't this what we call greed? Can you simply want too much, or need something because you need it more than somebody else? Our desires don't mean shit in reality, because we usually go after things that end up hurting somebody else. This isn't always the case because there is usually enough to go around for everyone. But what happens is somebody thinks they are better than others, superiority. This is when you create that greed. That is the reason for jealousy, and it's also why people are never happy. Greed will never equal love, and if love is the number one reason to be alive and to exist, then greed is something that should be punished and not promoted. In order to understand the difference between greed and desire, we must be able to identify each thing. To do this we need to look at the person's values and beliefs. These are the only things that humans have that other things do not have. So that is why humans are the only greedy things alive. Or are they? If everything is connected and goes back to the same thing, then wouldn't we have to assume that if it's something a human is capable of having, then it's something that everything is also capable of having? Being selfish and wanting more. There is an actual point to all of this, and that point will be understood if you know Lester Levenson's story. A man who in 1952 figured out the secret of happiness, the secret of enlightenment, and the secret of life. I don't have the energy to write it all out, but I can give you a summary of how it came up. In 1952 Lester was on his deathbed, and had two choices. He could take a bunch of morphine pills and overdose in a blissful way, or he could start to find the answers to why he had never been happy for very long. Of course, this story would not be that good if he had taken the morphine option. Thankfully for us he chose to explore the reasons why. He searched every single book he had ever read or had access to and nothing could answer his questions. What this led him to believe is that the answer had to come from inside of himself. What he found was that love was the only thing that truly mattered, even after becoming an expert in every field of study you could imagine. To love yourself and others to be exact, as I mentioned earlier. But to do this he had to go back over every single experience where he had ever felt anything but love. Imagine the work and the time it would take to do so while battling to save his own life. What he found out while going back and deciding to love everyone he had ever known was that his health was improving. His ulcers that caused tremendous suffering wasn't bothering him anymore. Every time he would dissolve his hate, jealousy, and problem with another person he got happier. This would lead him to figure out that whatever happens in life is a result of thinking about it before it came true. Now, if you have heard of the law of attraction, this may seem similar. He reasoned that the suffering in life goes away when you think about the positive things. But it wasn't just about thinking them, he also had to do a few things as well. The need to dissolve the negatives. Dissolve is the word that he used to confront his fear of death, jealousies, and hate. But what it actually required is simple. You no longer believe that the things which cause worry are important and that the priority is on love. What then is required to love something that is different than what we think? Because being loved isn't what matters, showing love doesn't have a certain application, but understanding how to love is where we need to look. How can you be loving to someone? How can you be kind, caring and compassionate to the entire universe? Well, if you can figure these out then you will have happiness. He also wanted to know why he hadn't been happy despite reaching every goal he had ever wanted. For this he found out that wants are the least important things in life. The idea is to not want anything and just let things happen as they happen. Well, this is vague in my opinion, so to take it a step further is to become aware of everything as it's happening. This awareness is also how you discover what people need and it's how you practice loving something. Once you have found your answers and are happier, the important thing to do is to teach it to others so that they also find out the steps. Like I am doing for you with this website. Lester also realized that being happy all the time had gotten tiresome, so he needed to accept peace. Because peace is eternal and when you have peace you are always gonna be happy and fulfilled. One of the last things his story told was that he figured out that all of the universe connected like a comb. There is one base and then lots of teeth. Everyone can be a tooth and be part of the base, because of this we are all connected and when you think about things from the base you see that he is right. When you look at the comb from the perception of the teeth, that is when life makes little sense. That is when everyone is trying to be an individual and where all the negatives happen. To recap what wanting has taught us. When you accept that the universe is composed of all things that humans consider alive. This means that everything is alive and not just based on what we think we know. This leads us to figure out many different ways to prove things are one. This also shows that loving ourselves and loving others is essentially the same thing. Because we all share the same base, that is we are all created from the exact same things and everything in the universe is also proof of that. We can become a happy person if we can clean up and dissolve our negative in the past and present. When this happens we experience true happiness. That when everything is cleaned up and we are practicing it, we will be able to accept peace in our lives. This will lead to euphoria and allow us to teach how we did it to other people. This way everyone can eventually feel the same way and this will be the only way that life can exist in harmony. Learn this and practice this and you will have something you can teach others.